Hello again, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us for this 14th day of February 2022 edition of Alaska Weather. I'm David Percy, a meteorologist with the National Weather Service. Up first, we've got wind chill warning out for the eastern Arctic coast, eastern Beaufort Sea coast there, and that's out until noon Wednesday for gusty winds and wind chills down to 70 degrees below zero. Again, that's for the next couple of days through noon Wednesday. Out to the west, wind chill advisory out for the northwest coast, Kivalina on up to Point Hope, Cape Lisburne, as well as St. Lawrence Island and the Bering Strait coast. Wind chill advisory, which is out through Wednesday, for wind chills to 50 degrees below zero. And then over toward the eastern North Gulf Coast, we've got winter weather advisory out until 7 p.m. this evening for the Yakutat area for several more inches of snow. And again, that's out until 7 p.m., so there's a few more hours there. And then there's a, let's see, for the Yukon Delta, I didn't get it highlighted on here, but there's a winter weather advisory out until 9 p.m. this evening for up to 5 more inches of snow there for the Kuskokwim Delta. And winds gusting to 30 miles an hour, and that's mostly along the coastline for the windy areas there. The snow across the entire delta, 1 to 5 inches, but the winds gusting to 30 miles an hour, that's along the coast from Kipnuk to Hooper Bay, and that's where the visibilities will be reduced to less than half mile at times in blowing and drifting snow. From there, moving on to the satellite imagery, you can see low pressure moving northward just west of Adak. That brought 50 to 60 mile an hour wind gusts to Adak today from the south and southeast, and also windy conditions with periods of rain there for Atka Island. Kind of getting into a break, some clearing showing up there approaching the Fox Islands this afternoon, and the main front, southwest flow, right across the Alaska Peninsula there, across the Aleutian Range, Shelikof Strait, Kodiak Island, right up into Cook Inlet, Kenai Peninsula. That's what's bringing the heavy snow into south central Alaska at midday and into the afternoon today. Anchorage, Merrifield, both reporting heavy snow and pretty good snowfall occurring elsewhere along the Kenai Peninsula and in south central Alaska, spreading up the Copper River Basin. And general area snow across southern Alaska. You can see the clouds are extending westward across the Kuskokwim Valley, Yukon Delta, Kuskokwim Delta, out to areas just north of the Pribilofs. Kind of a mixed precipitation going on, a little warmer air pushed up to St. Paul Island, temperature right around 32 degrees this afternoon. And otherwise cold. North Slope still well below zero, Arctic coast mostly fair up over the northern half of the state. And sunshine breaking out over the southern panhandle, and pretty dry conditions, but thicker clouds up to the north. And rolling this through again, you can see the clear skies and varying amounts of mid and high level clouds passing by over the northern panhandle. And moisture kind of letting up along the eastern North Gulf Coast. Around Yakutat this afternoon, precipitation had ended for a few hours. Expected to pick back up again with that snow advisory until 7 p.m. And on the chart, there's the warm front that brought about 6 to 8 inches of snow to King Salmon, changing to rain this afternoon, actually by late morning, changing to rain into the afternoon as the warm front pushed warmer air northward. Mixed rain and snow along that feature up into the southern Kenai Peninsula. Heavy snow pushing in, as I mentioned, to Cook Inlet and south central Alaska with areas of snow back to the west. A little windy conditions there along the Kuskokwim Delta coastline as well. Otherwise, about a third of an inch of rain. Not too bad there with wind gusts of 50 miles an hour for the Cold Bay area. And let's see, other than that 0.6 of an inch water equivalent at King Salmon, this is one of the heavier rainfall precipitation amounts around the state today. Other than that, not too bad, 0.3 of an inch, as I mentioned, at Cold Bay. And elsewhere, lighter amounts, but picking up over south central Alaska. Dry over the north, that continues tonight. Cold temperatures below zero, Arctic high pressure locked in over the North Slope Brooks Range, controlling the northern half of the state with the Arctic boundary down to the south. And along that feature, kind of dashing in as a trough with a weak low pressure over the southern Kuskokwim Valley. Periods of snow continue from the southwest coast and actually across the northern Bering Sea, right in across southern Alaska. Amounts north of the Alaska Range will be very light, and heavier amounts down to the south. Periods of snow continue the entire night, may lighten up later on here for south central Alaska. And for the North Gulf Coast, rain or snow moves into the northern panhandle, but amounts will be on the light side. Stays dry to the south. Look for an increase in the clouds, though, for the southern southeast coast, Dixon entrance. And another storm pushes wind and rain into the western Aleutians, southwest Bering Sea. And tomorrow, that low pressure pulls westward and weakens, and you get a break over the western Aleutians. AKwx and AKwx may have a dry day with some clearing and sunshine, as a weaker low moves northward toward the Fox Islands. Warm front associated with that will push rain and warmer temperatures, or keep it warm over the Alaska Peninsula, with gusty southeast winds possibly as high as 40 to 50 miles an hour around Cold Bay, for example, but lighter winds for the Fox Islands. Look for the Arctic front to push northward, warmer air into the Pribilofs, so periods of light rain or chance of showers, but nothing heavy, either wind or rain-wise there. And mixed rain and snow, North Gulf coastal areas, periods of snow continue. Light periods of snow, quite an extensive area there from the eastern interior north of Eagle. Yukon Flats right on back to the southwest coast, down into Prince William Sound and the North Gulf coast. It will probably be mixed with rain, if not outright rain, along the coast. And some rain and snow showers over the panhandle with cloudy skies. And for Wednesday, look for windier conditions over the northern panhandle with periods of rain and snow, depending on your elevation and latitude and proximity to the Pacific. Same thing for the North Gulf coast. And again, light snow, periods of, across southern Alaska, with the gusty winds up over the eastern interior. Some of that could result in some blowing snow. Areas of blowing snow also possible over the Yukon Delta. Stays clear and cold. Seward Peninsula, Kobuk, Koyukuk Valley, Yukon Flats up into the Brooks Range. But a trough dropping down from the Arctic brings a chance of snow showers, mostly central eastern Arctic coast, but even the west side has a risk of some snow showers. And 973 millibar low moves to Amchitka Island, and tight enough gradient there could be a narrow band of storm force winds on the eastern quadrant of that low cutting right across Adak Island. Definitely gales. But the front itself, not that impressive on the wind feature there, and precipitation, just some light rain. And right on the edge of right on the range snow line there for the Pribilof Islands. Bristol Bay, rain, periods of showers for the Alaska Peninsula, rain or snow. And starting to dry out a little bit as that trough swings across Kodiak Island, but it'll be slow to dry out, but the precipitation won't be all that heavy with that west-northwest wind flow. And lows tonight, 20 to 35 below for the North Slope and Arctic, or actually the central interior, North Slope Arctic coast, 25 to 45 below. Coldest over the North Slope areas, Umiat Airfield, for example, over toward Dead Horse. And 10 to 20 below, Tanana Valley, single numbers in the Alaska Range. 20s south of the Alaska Range, near 10 in the Copper River Basin. And mid-20s in northern panhandle, mid to upper 30s to the south, upper 30s Kodiak Island, and upper 30s near 40 for the Unalaska and the Alaska Peninsula and the central Aleutians, and maybe a low of about 29 for St. Paul, but much colder up to the north, St. Lawrence Island, so Vunga, Gamble down to 12 below zero, high staying below zero for St. Lawrence Island. On the north side of the Arctic front there, south of the Arctic front, milder, 30 to 40 degrees for southern Alaska, especially King Salmon, lower 40s for the Alaska Peninsula, 44 for Unalaska, 43 for Adak, and 43 also for Kodiak for the highs tomorrow. And mid-30s up around Skagway and Haines, so in the panhandle there, 35 for Yakutat, lower 40s down to the south, upper 20s, lower 30s, Copper River Basin to the North Gulf Coast, and right around zero or a little above for the Fairbanks area, but below zero for Tanana, and staying below zero, far below zero for the North Slope on out to the Arctic coast. Lows not too colder for the areas up north there than it will be for your afternoon highs, but still falling in that 40 to 45 below range for the upper Yukon, or for the Yukon Flats, Shakiatik, Fort Yukon, Beaver, Arctic Village. Otherwise, everyone else should be in the minus 30s or minus 20s, back below zero for the Fairbanks area, and a little cooler, but still 20s to mid-30s, south central Alaska, staying above freezing for Bristol Bay, Kodiak Island, and the Panhandle, 30 north to near 40 to the south, and mid-30s out over the Aleutians. Highs Wednesday afternoon, below zero again, northern half of the state, well above zero, in fact above freezing, near 40 for Bristol Bay, lower 40s Kodiak Island, 40 for the northern Panhandle to mid-40s down to the south, Sitka, Craig, Kloak, Heidelberg could reach 46, 41 for Kodiak, and lower 40s for the central Aleutians, near the frost point there for the Pribilofs, and a little below zero St. Lawrence Island. Bristol Bay 35 to 40, and in the lower 30s for the northern or actually southern Kuskokwim Valley, Sleep, Mute, Sparrowvon, lower 30s, teens to the north.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
IFR, Central Arctic Coast, marginal VFR for the North Slope, Brooks Range down into the central interior, VFR, IFR, Northern Bering Sea there from the Shimiat-2 area right in across the southwest coast into the interior, Kuskokwim Valley, Western Alaska Range, Northern Susitna Valley, Talkeetnas, Matanuska Valley, Prince William Sound, Northern, and Copper River Basin, IFR for the Panhandle, and marginal VFR, Northern Kodiak Island, VFR to the south, and the Alaska Peninsula, VFR. Afternoon. IFR, Eastern Arctic Coast, IFR, Central Eastern Interior into the Copper River Basin, IFR, Southern Kodiak Island, Fognak Island, marginal, VFR, Kenai Peninsula, most of Cook Inlet, Iliamna Lake, Kamishak Bay into southern Kuskokwim Valley, marginal VFR, Southwest Interior, Yukon Delta Coast, IFR, IFR, Western Bering Sea, IFR for the Eastern Aleutians, Alaska Peninsula, marginal VFR for the Panhandle, North Gulf Coast into the Copper River Basin, Knik and Turnagain Arms. And for the Wednesday morning outlook, back to IFR for the Central Arctic Coast, marginal VFR for the North Slope, Central Interior, VFR, marginal VFR over the South Central Interior. And then farther to the south, we've got a band of IFR across southern Alaska from the central Bering Sea there, Pribilof, St. Matthew Island, eastward, Kenai Peninsula, Kodiak Island in the IFR zone. And that goes across the Gulf, Northeast Pacific to the coastal areas of the Panhandle. Otherwise looking pretty marginal for the start Wednesday morning for the southeast coast. Another batch IFR moving on up into the west central Aleutians from just east of Shimiat-2 to Atka Island, and VFR for the Fox Islands. That changes as the band IFR moves pretty rapidly eastward across the eastern Aleutians there. Already by the afternoon, after starting out VFR, you go to IFR, then back toward VFR for Nikolsky. IFR pushing back in with another round of lower conditions there in toward Atka Island, extending back to Shimiat-2, marginal VFR for the Komodorskis. IFR Southern Alaska, up to the north there, south of the Brooks Range, VFR, north of the Brooks Range, marginal VFR and IFR. IFR, North Gulf Coast and the Panhandle, VFR Kodiak Island, Bristol Bay, the Alaska Peninsula and Aleutian Range. Passes, marginal VFR to VFR for Anatuvik, Adigan, marginal VFR to VFR. Lake Clark, IFR, Merrill, IFR. Rainy, IFR. Windy, IFR. Isabel, IFR. Mentasta, IFR. Tanita, IFR. Portage, IFR. Chilcoot and White, IFR. Freezing levels, kind of a double banding of the surface there, so take your pick. Probably in between the two zones there will be right around or near the surface. 2,000 feet, those southern Kenai Peninsula, free air freezing levels, to 4,000 feet there across the Barren Islands, and then up to 8,000 feet over the Northeast Pacific. And from there, icing, areas of light to isolated moderate rime icing, southeast coast, up into the Yukon, Northwest Territories of Canada, and just north of Eagle, though, down to the North Gulf Coast, which includes the Copper River Basin, the Upper Tanana Valley 40-mile country, but that area extends westward all the way to the Yukon coast there and the northern Kuskokwim Delta coast, St. Lawrence Island, Nunivak Island to the Pribilofs. Western Aleutians, we've got areas of icing all the way to about Atka, cutting off right around Atka, then another band with that southwest flow slipping up into the Fox Islands and along the Alaska Peninsula, streaming east-northeastward across Kodiak Island. Jet stream, westerly flow. Strongest there across southern Alaska, 65 knots near Nunivak Island to 150 knots there just north of the Panhandle. And another band of westerlies, the more or less Arctic jet there, west 75 to 95 knots across the northern interior, but southwest 115 across the Fox Islands. 9,000 feet, southern Alaska, 40 to 60 knot westerlies turn northwest, 60 to 70 knots over the Panhandle. Lighter southerlies out over the Bering Sea. 3,000 feet, light variable winds, interior Alaska, northwest, maybe 25 to 40 knots just off the southeast coast. Turbulence-wise, Look for considerable moderate chop along the coast of the Panhandle, Dixon Entrance northward, the Elephant Cove, and also Kodiak Island, Southern Cook Inlet, Southwest Interior, Alaska Peninsula.
Welcome to another edition of Alaska Weather Facts. I'm meteorologist Dave Snyder, and joining us once again is our good friend Eric Stevens from GINA, the Geographic Information Network of Alaska. Thanks again for joining us, Eric. We really appreciate it, as always.
Happy to be here, Dave.
Thanks. And, you know, we're going to ask you some more satellite questions here, but, you know,
Okay.
since you're a regular guest, we're going to give you a riddle this time, kind of a trick start to the show.
Okay.
How do you see a polar bear in a snowstorm?
Sounds like a challenging question because
Okay.
the polar bear is white and the snowstorm's white.
Yeah.
How do you do that? Well, in the world of satellite meteorology, you couldn't, because the spatial resolution of this instrument that we're going to talk about today has 375 meters resolution, and even the most well-fed polar bear will not be 375 meters across.
I'm okay with that.
Yeah, you wouldn't want to run into such a
No, that'd be a
creature,
bad day.
would you? In the satellite meteorology world, the equivalent would be, how do you tell the difference between clouds and then an area that has no clouds but's covered by snow,
Right.
a piece of ocean that has no clouds but has sea ice?
Ah.
All three of these are white. The
Right.
snow, the clouds, the sea ice, it's all white. So how, using satellite data, can you tell someone where the clouds are and where the clear areas are? This is important for aviators. Mariners want to know, in the ocean there, this white stuff, is that sea ice or is that just a cloud? How do we tell the difference? And it turns out, if you look, say, at a picture of Alaska from the springtime, March or April, and it's high noon, so we're getting a lot of sunshine. If you were riding on a satellite with your human eye, look down, everything's white.
Right.
And we've got a picture of Alaska from early April, and we're seeing some of the lower elevations in south central Alaska are melting out, getting some brown ground there, but otherwise there's a whole lot of white on the image. What areas are cloudy, but what areas are clear and covered by snow or ice?
Okay.
It turns out that if we leave the visible spectrum behind a little bit, see, a satellite has multiple channels in the electromagnetic spectrum that it can look at.
Oh, okay.
Part of that's visible light, what we
Right.
see as humans, but there's a lot going on at other wavelengths. If we add in something that's called near infrared, what we couldn't quite see, but we're getting into that infrared territory, there's a magical property that we can exploit.
Secrets to find. Okay.
Oh yeah, this is actually powerful and almost magical, that at a slightly longer wavelength, when the sun shines down on Alaska and then it bounces off back to the satellite, at that near infrared wavelength, it turns out that snow and ice will absorb that wavelength, but liquid water, like liquid droplets in a cloud, will reflect it back.
Okay.
And that's not the way it works in visible. Visible, it just bounces off of all those targets the same. But at near infrared, snow and ice absorbs it, and the liquid will reflect it back. Liquid cloud droplets will do that.
Okay.
And so an image where everything looks white suddenly becomes colorful.
Oh,
And the way this recipe works is that the clouds look pink, and the snow-covered ground and the ice-covered ocean look blue. Suddenly now, we're able to see the polar bear in the snowstorm. We're able to see where the clouds are and where the snow is and where the ice is. This is a powerful advantage. Consider the case zooming into the Bering Strait area. What if you were asked to brief a pilot who wanted to fly, say, from Kotzebue down to Savunga or Gamble, and had to fly VFR, visual flight rules, so they had to stay out of the clouds? Could you use a satellite image where everything is white to provide that pilot any guidance?
It'd be pretty tricky.
Very tricky. And that's why we have to go to this other recipe where the all-white polar bear in the snowstorm becomes more colorful. And now we can tell the pilot, aha, this is a cloud you want to stay out of, but over here, sure, it looks white in the visible spectrum, but what we're doing, we'll show you, oh, this is just snow-covered ground, but it's clear, so you can fly right through there, visual flight rules. Same thing for a mariner who might want to get down to St. Lawrence Island, say, but it has to avoid the sea ice. This product has applicability there as well.
Wonderful.
It's an amazing new technology, so many new channels. The satellite that makes this imagery actually has 22 different channels that it looks at.
22 secret decoder rings.
22 secret decoder rings.
Okay. I liken this to an activity I had in the car when I was growing up. We go on long car rides, and we do all the work in these activity books to, stay calm, cool, and collected for our parents who were trying to get us across the state. But to get the answer, the real answer, you had to apply that red sheet to see the answer or the secret path or whatever the message was in that activity book to get you onto the next page. And it's also like a photography filter, right? If you're taking a lot of pictures, you can apply different colors to see different parts of that image. I mean, that sounds a lot like what you're talking about.
Oh, you know it. The information is in there all along. We just have to combine the channels in a way to reveal what's in there. And by the way, you're dating yourself. So you didn't have an iPad in the back of the car?
No, sir.
Okay. Well, we have, lastly, for dessert, there's a great image of the same kind of recipe. We're looking at South Central Alaska the first week of January. In first week of January, the sun, even at noon, is really low on the horizon, barely up. And in this image, the fun thing is the shadow of Denali. We can see the shadow of Denali over a lower pink cloud deck.
Yeah, that's amazing.
And Denali at 20,000 feet casts a big shadow. So this is another, just for fun, kind of application here. This is called multispectral satellite imagery, and it's the future. And happily, the future is now.
Oh, that is fascinating. And 22 different secrets that can be revealed from just one satellite tool that's floating overhead. Eric, thanks so much for joining us again. We can't wait to have you back and telling us more secrets of satellite technology that are passing over us every single day, many times a day, over Alaska and helping us all the way in many different parts of our lives. So thanks so much for joining us again.
Well, happy to be here.
All right. And thank you for staying with us. We'll be back with a little more weather here in just a few minutes. And of course, we'll have more Alaska weather facts anytime online.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome back. Looking at today's sea ice analysis. Thin ice in and around St. Paul Island, but not quite to St. George. And the forecast for the next 5 days is for southward and southwest advance of the ice edge, especially the heavier ice field there. And from there, going on to coastal water forecasts, we've got, there we go, a little lag in the program there. Small craft advisories on the south coast. West winds 25 knots, seas 11 feet. North coast, west winds 20 knots, 12 to 13 foot seas. Stevens Passage, south winds at 20 knots. Clarence Strait south at 15, seas 3 to 4 feet. And Lynn Canal, southeast 15, gale force gusts to 35 knots with 3 foot seas. And for the day on Wednesday, southeast winds 20 knots for the central and northern inner channels, and south 25 for Clarence Strait with 4 foot seas. Otherwise, small craft advisories for the outer coastline, central and south coast will be southwest at 30 knots. And for the north coast, south winds at 25 knots with seas around 14 feet. Prince William Sound, light northeast breeze or variable to northeast at 10 knots, seas 2 feet. And west 15 for the eastern North Gulf Coast. West side there, southwest winds 20 knots, extend down to the Barren Islands, seas around 10 feet. Kamishak Bay, southwest 20 knots, seas 4 feet. Small craft advisories for Cook Inlet for south to southwest winds 25 to 30 knots, seas in the ice-free waters up to 8 feet south of the Forelands. And for Wednesday, Cook Inlet, north to northwest winds 15 to 20 knots, west 25 knots, small craft advisory winds for Kamishak Bay with 5 foot seas. Barren Islands, western North Gulf Coast, southwest winds 30 knots, seas around 12 feet. Small craft advisories for the Middleton Island zone for southwest winds at 25 knots. Prince William Sound, northeast at about 20 knots with 3 foot seas. Kodiak Island, southwest winds 25 knots, seas 16 feet. Alaska Peninsula, Pacific side, southeast 30 knots, top side there, east at 20. Bristol Bay, east winds at 10. And from Castle Cape to Sitkinak, winds will be south at 20 knots. And for the day on Wednesday, Alaska Peninsula, south winds 30 knots, seas 20 feet. Southeast 25 knot brisk wind advisories for Bristol Bay. And for southeast winds at 25 knots, Kodiak Island. And from Sitkinak to Castle Cape, winds will be southwest at 30 knots. Eastern Aleutians, Unalaska Island, southeast 20 to 30 knots. Winmac Island, southeast 15 to 20 knots. Adak and Atka, south to southeast 25 knots, 10 to 20 foot seas. And for Amchitka Island, south at 25. Kiska, Shimmy, and Attu, winds will be predominantly southeast at 30 knots with 20 foot seas. And for Wednesday, Shimia to Kiska, northeast at 30. Amchitka Island, southeast at 30 knots. Adak and Atka, south to southeast winds 30 knots, 11 to 22 foot seas. And for the Fox Islands, small craft advisories, south to southeast winds 25 to 30 knots. Southwest coast, Yukon Delta coast, northeast at 20, 25 knot northeast winds for St. Matthew Island, southeast at 20 for the Pribilofs, and southeast only 15 for the Kuskokwim Delta coast, Nunivak Island. And for St. Lawrence Island, winds will be northeast at 30 knots and 20 knots for Norton Bay, Norton Sound. Probably Norton Bay as well. And for the day on Wednesday, brisk wind advisories, northern Bering Sea, Norton Sound, Yukon Delta coast, all northeast at 30 knots. Gale warnings for St. Matthew Island, northeast at 40. Only 20 knots from the southeast for the Pribilof Islands, and brisk wind advisories for the Kuskokwim Delta coast for southeast winds at 25 knots. Central and eastern Wilbur Sea coast, west winds 15 to 20 knots. Lighter winds on the west side there, southwest at 10. Cape Beaufort to Wales, or Cape Beaufort to Cape Thompson, west at 10. Cape Thompson to Wales, north at 15. And then 15 to 20 knot northerly winds from Wales to Cape Beaufort, and north at 10 for the north winds, 10 knots for the western Arctic coast. Central coast, west 15, and 20 knot west winds for the east side. For tonight, high pressure light winds up that way, with variable clouds over the north slope and along the Arctic coast, and periods of snow. Southern Alaska with that trough, low pressure over the southern Kuskokwim Valley there, southwest interior, and a trough extending eastward with areas of snow along that axis, mixing with rain along the coastline into the northern panhandle, dry southern southeast coast, and wind and rain pushing into the western Aleutian southwest Bering Sea. And a low comes northward there, brings wet conditions, mild temperatures into the Fox Islands and the Alaska Peninsula. A little more wind for the peninsula than the eastern Aleutians. Otherwise, periods of snow continue, mixed with rain at times along the coast and over the panhandle, dry northern half of the state under Arctic high pressure.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.